Hi, Johnny.
Hi, Penelope.
So, Johnny, I don't like beer very much.
That's understandable. You're only 9.
But I do love bubbly water. I drink gallons of that stuff. I wish there was a convenient place that my dad could exchange his empty SodaStream canisters for a reasonable price.
Well, you need wish no longer. Tell your dad to come to Bitter Nesters. We have the exchange cylinders, replacement bottles, and all sorts of SodaStream flavors.
That's awesome! I can't wait! I'm so excited! Okay,
That was fun. Are you going to play our theme song on the sax?
Yes.
It's da 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 da. Right? Is that it?
I don't know. Play whatever he fucking wants to.
Yeah. Welcome to See What You Can Brew, the podcast about homebrewing, community, and everything beer in New York City.
Brought to you by Bitter Nesters in Brooklyn, New York. We're your hosts, Douglas Amport.
And I'm John Lapola, plus our very special guest host,
Penelope Amport.
Today's show is going to be a little bit different. We've got an in-depth interview with two of our very good friends, Chris Cuzme and Mary Izett.
And if you don't know who that is, get out from under your rock and head to Fifth Hammer Brewing in Long Island City.
We had a great conversation with Mary and Chris, and we want to get to it right away. But first, a couple of quick events on the horizon. We just recently brewed with our friend Flint and the Breweries out at Randolph Beer in Williamsburg.
It was the first brute IPA I've ever made.
I'm sure it was. It was really a fun brew day, and it was great to hang out with the Breweries and with Flint. We were making this beer for our fall bike ride, which is coming up on Sunday, September 29th. We meet here at Bitter Nesters at noon. It's completely free. We go to several breweries. We're going to start with Randolph and try this brute IPA. And then from Randolph, we're going to go to Grimm, and then we're going to go to Innerborough, and then hopefully KCBC. So it's really a bike crawl, right?
They've got a beautiful system.
They
out
really
at
do.
Randolph, don't they? Is that a 1 barrel or a 2 barrel?
It's a 1 barrel system. This is the one in Williamsburg. So Randolph does have another place in Dumbo, which is a 7 barrel system, I believe.
It's a
but
big
this
one.
is kind of their pilot system. It's very exciting to be brewing with them and having our beer on their, what do they call it, a tap wall?
Tap wall, yeah, with the cards, and you swipe, and you have to pour like ounces of beer. It's very
Right. If you've
interesting.
never been to Randolph, you pay money for a card, and you have 24 taps, and you can drink as little or as much as you want by just kind of sticking your card onto the tap wall. It's you got to come to check it out.
Penny,
it's really hard to
what's your
describe.
favorite part about going to Randolph with me?
My favorite part is about going to Randolph is that there's games there.
Yes, there are fun games so you can bring your kids and drink beer. It's a blast.
So that's very, very cool. So hopefully we'll see you on the 29th. Come try the Brute IPA. We do say that the bike ride is free, but the beer is not, just so you know. You have to pay your way as we go.
Keep that in mind.
And that's about it for events that are coming up in the area, as far as we know.
As always, if there's something that we've missed or that you want to add for next month, feel free to email us at douglas@bitterandesters.com, john@bitterandesters.com, or Douglas or John at seewhatyoucanbrew.com.
Or questions at seewhatyoucanbrew.com, or chicken salad at seewhatyoucanbrew.com.
That's not an email address. Okay, go ahead.
So we've known Chris and Mary since before we even opened Bitter Nesters, which is almost 9 years now. We've watched them grow in this community we call New York City beer into something of a local celebrity couple. It's been fascinating to see them become the amazing team that they are today, and it was really, really fun to talk to them. Just a note, we recorded this interview on location in their active brewery, so you can hear the sounds of New York City a little more clearly than usual.
Imagine, if you will, that you're actually there. Be transported and not distracted by the sirens and cars in the background.
So without further ado...
Here's Chris and Mary, owners of Fifth Hammer Brewing Company in Long Island City.
Have you guys ever been on a podcast before?
Maybe once collectively? Have we ever collectively been a guest on a podcast before? I don't think that we have.
Wow.
Maybe not.
Is this a first?
This might be a first that we are guests.
No,
in the
I think we were
Cuzme
on
Jimmy's
beer
legend?
sessions
Yeah,
maybe
maybe.
together.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe.
But that was technically before we were together, maybe.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, we got to ask you some questions.
Oh, did we start already?
We've been recording for a while now.
fantastic.
This is it. We're almost done.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Sorry
was
for the
practically-
interruption.
We're almost done. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us, and thanks for coming to our workplace to do it. And sorry for our interruption with our, our doors opening.
Thanks for the beer. We're drinking the Neighbor Brow. Is that what it's
Neighbor
called?
Brow Pilsner.
Neighbor Brow Pilsner.
Neighbor Brow Pils.
Thank you so much for it. It's delicious.
Poured on an authentic Pilsner tap, I learned the other day. I hadn't even seen one of those before.
Is it a side tap?
It is a side tap, yeah. So we can actually do 3 different pours of it, the traditional Czech way. So you can have like a giant. But this side tap makes foam in a different way that the regular pours do. It kind of makes it into kind of like a milky, foamy kind of thing. There's a little filter in there, and you're able to really control the foam that you have by having it be that side tap, because basically it's a ball valve in there. And there's a mliko pour, which is one of my favorite pours, which is basically this. It means milk. It's this giant foamy pour.
Is that like a traditional Urquell?
Yes.
way of
Yeah.
pouring?
So this is basically the traditional Pilsner Urquell tap. So there's the mliko, the hladinka, and then the vakarat pours, which is one is like is the smooth pour, the crisp pour, and the milk pour.
Wow.
So can I actually ask for that next
You
time I'm
can.
here?
If you want a mliko, yeah, we have we kind of do it like animal style. So where it's not. That's an In-N-Out reference where there's this whole language that's not actually on the menu that you can get if you get your burger
Secret
animal
menu.
style. Yeah, secret menu kind of thing. So there's a tab for
Off
the pours,
menu.
but it's not written on our menus.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Well, now everybody's going to know. All 70 people who listen to this podcast.
man.
See
Yeah,
what you can brew. Secrets.
Let's start off with a controversial subject.
Oh no.
How do you pronounce your last name, Chris?
Mary, how do you pronounce it? I say Cuzme. Chris Cuzme is my name. And
And what does Mary say?
I alternate between Cuzme and Cuzme.
Right. Most people say Cuzme, right?
who is that guy? How come I've never heard of him?
It's easy that way.
But I'm half Ecuadorian, and in Ecuador we add our mother's maiden name to our name. So my full name, me llamo Cristóbal Rafael Estrada Cuzme Omang, is my name.
But that doesn't quite fit on a koozie, does
No,
it?
it doesn't fit on a koozie. That's true.
It sounds like you should say prepare to die after saying
exactly.
that. And Mary, how do you pronounce your last name, actually?
Izett.
It's Izett.
Izett, is it?
Some people say Izett.
Yes. I don't mind.
So you guys are the owners, co-owners, along with Dave.
Along with our partner Dave Sharfstein and Eleni Zanius. Yes.
You are the co-owners of Fifth Hammer Brewing Company.
Which
in-
we're at, by the way. We are at Fifth Hammer.
So all the
recording
noise
this.
in the background is them making the beer and moving the grain and yelling at each other.
That's right. That's how we get things done here. Yelling.
West Coast IPA, baby. It's what we're brewing right now.
Awesome. What's it called?
Blobfish.
Is there a story behind that?
Well, one quintessential IPA of Californian thing that kind of was really popular for a very long time was named after a fish, and we think that the blobfish is an undersung and underappreciated fish. It's got a really beautiful face that is ugly when it's out of water, beautiful in water. It basically has no bone structure or no kind of cartilage structure, so when you take it out of it's a deep sea fish, and when you take it out of the water, it like loses all of its form, and it's voted #1 ugly every year.
It is
always going to
accurately
be
named Blobfish.
It's
really
never going to
sad.
lose that.
Never going to lose that title.
Okay, when did you guys start Fifth Hammer? You guys are celebrating an anniversary very soon.
That's true. We officially opened our front door on September 29th, 2017, and then we celebrated that officially on October 5th, 2017. The story obviously goes deeper than that. Mary and I have been home brewing a lot in the city and professionally brewing in the city through various avenues. My last stint was a place called 508 Gastro Brewery, brewing in the basement of a restaurant in Manhattan. A janky, wonky Franken brewery system, which was loads of fun, very challenging, but made me a better brewer through those challenges. But it was there that I found a vocation in doing this, where I wanted to really continue with this. And at the end of that, Mary and I decided to start a brewing company called Cuzette Libations, that celebrated fermentations of all kinds, but because of our experience and connections in the beer world, we did it as primarily a malted barley-based beverage company, at least to start with. But that was at the same time, as 508 was closing, that we met our current partner, Dave Sharfstein, who is a recovering lawyer, and he was looking to, get out. He had already quit law, and was searching for a place that he could basically flip over. He's a lover of craft beer, but not exactly a brewer, and he wanted to celebrate that, and was looking for a turnkey place that he could turn into a craft beer bar in New York City. And then his broker brought him to 508 Gastro Brewery, where we had already. The lease was already taken from someone else, and his broker didn't know that, so he was mad at his broker. But he fell in love with the ambiance, and he fell in love. Then he had a sip of beer. He was like, "Oh my God, this beer is amazing." Then he found out that the place had already been taken up, so he was kind of bummed about that. But he stayed for more beer and just enjoyed it. He was lamenting that fact a couple days later, literally a couple days later, to a friend, and his friend was like, "Wait, was that down in?" So I think I was there recently. I took a tour, and the brewer was really nice and it was super cool. And I think I have his card in my pocket. And
Wow.
and Dave was like, "You do?" And the guy's like, looked in his pocket. I have his card. He was like, Dave was like, "You have to give me that card." So he took that card. And so I'm in Hong Kong visiting my family, trying to figure out what my next steps are going to be. And I get this email from Dave Sharfstein. He's like, "Hey, this might sound kind of weird, but he told me that story, and he's like, I don't know what you're doing next, but I'd love to, maybe explore options with you." And I was like, "Oh, hold on, buddy, let me get back to the States and let's have a beer and then meet each other." And I brought Mary to vet him with me.
Yeah, because I was like, dude, who is this guy? Like, you are not going to this meeting without me.
And it's amazing. He's an amazing guy. He's super smart. Our values are very much in line with what we want out of life, which is like we're not trying to take over the world with this project. We want to be sustainable. We want to have the fun and have integrity and make the things we want to make, while at the same time not being dumb and putting ourselves out of business by just doing that. I mean, this is a business, and we have to make some for them and some for us. There's a Venn diagram of what you need to stay in business and what we really like to make, and in an ideal world, they're the same circle. And I feel very thankful that for our lineup, that generally we're doing all of that. Like it is the same circle. There's very little that we're
really
making
obvious
that's
too.
not. Yeah. That's very little that we're not making that we don't want to be making. Like there's nothing that we're making.
That's great.
So I think that was a really good summary of the last 20 years of New York City brewing history. I mean, as far as you guys see it, but I mean, I think you missed a lot in there. I mean, you were both New York City Homebrew Club, Homebrew Guild.
Okay.
Like Fifth Hammer we'll definitely talk more about.
Sure.
But I want to know, like, how you went from being Chris Cuzme, the homebrewer, Mary Izett,
Also the homebrewer.
also the homebrewer, Mary Izett, also the homebrewer, to president of the Homebrew Club, Homebrew Guild, right, in New York City. And
Were you both president at one time?
Yes, for different years. I mean, we worked with each of you on the competition at one point. I mean, to working at 508, to writing a book on fermentation. I mean, you gave us like the 5-second, I'm sorry, you gave us like the 5-second story there. I'm just a little curious if we can get that 7-second story
Sure.
on the deep past.
Yeah, the deep past. You want me to start?
Yeah, you
All
started
right.
homebrewing before
I did start homebrewing before Mary. So my homebrewing experience started in Philadelphia in 2001. I was a professional musician here in New York City, and I was doing some temp work here and there. But the struggle of being a musician, I was baking bread, but gigs were few and far to come by. I finally decided I didn't want to be a professional musician, so I was doing temp work to like supplement that. And I was with a bunch of other musicians I was playing with a lot. We decided to rent a house in Philadelphia and move to Philadelphia. But then the drummer, after I'd already signed the lease, the drummer decided to stay in New York City. This is all kind of tying into each other eventually. At the same time as we did this, I already signed the lease for Philadelphia. I convinced my girlfriend at the time to go to Philly too. It made more sense for her. She was a dancer, and there's a lot of art going on down there. I got offered a job here to be full-time with this finance company that I call it the temp gig gone wrong. But anyway, I ended up keeping that house in Philadelphia and going there on the weekends, visiting my girlfriend and staying at the house and playing a bunch of music with my friends. And this house had enough space to start homebrewing. And I'd always wanted to homebrew. I knew you could, but I didn't really know how much I'd get into it. I started with George and Nancy from Home Sweet Homebrew on 20th and Sansom, and they're still George and Nancy Rigby. They're still
I've met them. Yeah, they're really cool. Place has been there like forever.
Oh man, yeah, it's and it's a staple, isn't it? I mean, Sam Calagione, got stuff from them early on, and like their history runs deep for a lot of the pro brewers right there. So I got a homebrew kit, and I made my first homebrew on the weekend, and it's fermenting in Philadelphia, and I'm at my job in New York City, and I'm after like making that. I love cooking, but when you cook, you have the results pretty immediately, and it's fermenting in Philadelphia. I'm here in New York a couple days after, and I'm nervous about it. Like I don't know what's going on, and I'm thinking about it all. And I fell in love with that waiting time and the process of that. But I was also very nervous. I was looking online at different things locally that could help me to maybe if there are some groups or something else. And I found out about this club called the New York City Home Brewers Guild. That I guess, or no. I found out about this guy. There was this homebrew competition here called the Best of Brooklyn, and there was a guy that kept winning blue medals or blue ribbons. This guy Phil Clark or something like that. And I was like, oh man, who's this guy? And then I found out like this guy Phil Clark actually belonged to this club called the New York City Home Brewers Guild, that was a homebrew club, and they meet in New York City on Tuesday nights, or like third Tuesdays of the month, and I'm like, what day is it? Oh, third Tuesday. What time do they start? Oh, 7:30. It's 6:30 now. I busted out of the place, and I went straight to this place called Brewski's. I walk into Brewski's, and this guy is like, "Hi, I'm Phil Clark." I'm like, "Oh my God, you're Phil Clark!" He was my hero to friend in like literally less than an hour after I went to those things. And I became part of the New York City Home Brewers Guild, and those are my brethren in camaraderie. I learned a lot from my peers there.
That's amazing.
Phil actually was one of the first people to come to our store.
Yeah?
I think he was literally the second person through the door. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really nice of him because he came from far. I mean, he was up in Westchester, and he came down just to see the store, and I think he wrote on Facebook or something, "Good place." And I was like, "Thanks, Phil."
It was our first good review. Yeah.
Right on. Brewski's then closed, but the guy who bought, or sorry, it didn't close, but a new guy bought the place or started renting the place, and he rented that place and the place right next to it, changed the name of Brewski's to Standings. Next door to it was Burp Castle, which is a long-time stable. He did not change the name of Burp Castle, and we started meeting at Burp Castle. At the same time, I befriended somebody who owned a bar, or that was about to own a bar downstairs, Jimmy Carboni, and I became involved in that as well. And this is all relevant because in 2006, the New York City Home Brewers Guild, we decided to revive the beer judge certification program. We hadn't held classes, at least since I had been a member since 2001. Until 2006, we finally did it. Chris Post of Wandering Star was president at the time. I was, I think, secretary, and we started doing these classes. And in, I think, the second class, this girl came in, this brainiac, and started asking all these questions, and it turns out it was Mary Izett.
And that's how you met?
That's how we met.
That's how we met.
The brainiac
she came into
came in?
the beer judge certification class. And how did you get there?
So I had been drinking craft beer for a while, and I used to go to Beer Craft in Park Slope, because I lived in North Park Slope, and I would always go in there and ask them questions, and they were like, "You ask way too many questions. You need to start brewing. Like, you need to start brewing." So I did, and at that time, that was 2006. At that time, we didn't have a homebrew store in New York. We had a hydroponic store in Queens that had like a homebrew corner. So I got ingredients, and I did just a pale ale, extract pale ale, in January of that year. I think I'd been going to some beer events, like, brewery tap takeovers and that kind of stuff, and somebody had told me about the Malted Barley Appreciation Society, which was a homebrew club in Brooklyn that met at Muggs in Williamsburg. So I went to that, and I think Alex was president at the time. Alex Hall, yeah. And he announced that the New York City Homebrewers Guild had started beer judge certification program classes. And I was like, ooh, that sounds cool. So the first had already passed, but the second was coming up. So I showed up at the second class, and that's that's it.
And that's
I took a really deep dive into learning. I mean, I'd homebrewed one batch at that point. I don't even know if it was done. I was definitely by far the newest homebrewer in the class. I was the only female. I studied my ass off. Sean White, who now owns Little Fish Brewing Company in Ohio, actually taught me how to all grain in his backyard. In his kitchen and back. No, actually, it was in his kitchen. He didn't have a backyard. He had like a backyard you weren't supposed to go in, kind of thing. Like you could climb down this ladder and hang out down there. But it was a summer day. It was probably it had to be May, because I think we took the exam in June.
Yep.
But it was a super hot day. We're in his little kitchen. It was like 90 degrees brewing. But that's how I learned to all grain. And
it turned out to become judges at the same time. Like
yes.
Yeah.
No, you did not take the exam. You had to go. You went out of the country or something, didn't you?
You were getting arrested,
so.
probably.
Oh, maybe. I guess maybe I took it the year after.
Suspended license.
Yeah.
Suspended license.
Suspended license.
No, I think you ended up having like a gig either out of the country or somewhere else.
Really?
For that
So
year.
you were a judge first.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Are you both the same rank?
No,
No.
Judge?
definitely not. Definitely not.
I'm assuming that Mary is higher. in the
I am a
ranking.
national.
Yeah.
I just kind of
I need some
knew that.
retesting.
Yeah.
Anyway,
But I have a science but saying that, I mean, I have a science background, so I have an undergrad
Right.
in biology. I did 2 years of grad school in horticulture that had like a kind of biochemistry statistical lean, and so I kind of came into homebrewing from a science.
Your graduate studies was on
My what? Vidalia onions.
That's right, onions.
you got
I knew
questions
it was
about onions?
one thing. There was
Yes.
one thing that you worked on, onions.
But we immediately became friends, and she also had a beer and food pair-up meeting group that she had at the same time as I was starting to do beer and food pairings at the bar that I had kind of invested in a little bit. And so we decided to pair that up, and we started the New York City Degustation Advisory Team, NYC DAT.
Yep.
Wow.
And we did monthly pairings at Jimmy's and other places. We did a couple other pairings. We do beer, bacon, and cheese, or beer, pickles, and cheese, beer, cheese, and chocolate.
Yeah, so by pairing, I mean, we generally did 3 different things, like including beer. Have
You
3
guys
things.
continue that tradition now,
Yeah,
even.
here.
I mean, you had the potato chip pairing last
Yeah.
year.
The candy pairing.
The candy
yeah.
pairing.
Yep. I know. I need to schedule another potato chip. Somebody brought me
So good.
a bunch of potato chips from the UK, and so we need to set that up again. Coming soon.
Everybody's looking at me. It wasn't me. I know I just came back from London, but I
No.
came back potato chipless.
But you brought beer, so that was okay.
I did bring
Oh, that's good.
Yeah.
But at that time, if I may get personal, you were just
In other
friends.
relationships,
In
yep.
other
Yeah,
relationships,
She
just
was
friends.
married, and I was madly in love with
Yep.
somebody.
Yep. So fast forward to
Yep.
2011.
We never crossed any lines, for the record.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Never,
I
never crossed any lines.
I never.
No. Yeah, so fast forward 2011, I think. I woke up one day in April, and I woke up and I was like, I'm in love with Chris Cuzme. And it was crazy because although I love you dearly,
You were my business partner. I can't look at you that way.
I know.
That's how I felt at the time.
And yeah, I just didn't know that. I didn't think that was gonna happen. But took me a few months, but I convinced him that it was the right thing to do.
the best decision I've ever made. Absolutely.
Yeah. And then we moved in together the day before Sandy hit.
Oh wow.
Yep.
And that's when, coincidentally, exactly the same time that he took on Gas 508.
Sandy hit. She moved in. Sandy hit. We were just starting a podcast on Heritage Radio Network called Ferment About It, and I got the call to be the brewer at 508 Gastro Brewery right there.
Yep. The brewer had left, and it was in Zone A, so it was a block and a half from the river, and it was 6 feet underwater. It was in the basement.
Oh my God.
So completely underwater.
So I had to just clean and reconstruct everything, and learn it all over. And that was really great though, because if we go backwards a little bit more before we get to that part, my very first meeting at the New York City Home Brewers Guild in 2001, 2002 was the same first meeting as a gentleman by the name of Chris Post. And he was working in banking at the time, and I was doing temp work, at Merrill Lynch, or that gig gone wrong. Anyway, we befriended each other. He really loved like low ABV kind of English ales, which is kind of what brought me into like home brewing. Like at the time, there wasn't a whole lot of like porters and bitters and pales, so I enjoyed making those. That was the style that I started making. But we became great friends. In 2004, on a Friday night, was like after work, looking on eBay for just brewing things. He looked really miserable at his job, and he had some money saved up. He's found this brewing system, this 15-barrel brew system that had only been used 14 times on an island in Michigan, and like
By a little old lady.
It was called the Lighthouse Brewery or something. There, like it was on a island in the Great Lakes,
Wow.
like so it was hard to get to. Anyway, it faltered. Anyway, he was like, okay, the starting bid was so low. He just did the basic minimum of what he had, and at a fraction of the cost. He thought no way he'd get this, like out of sight, out of mind, just like left. And then Monday morning he goes into work and it's like, congratulations, you're the proud new owner of this 15-barrel system. He's like, oh shit. So he called me up. He's like, Cuzme, I guess we're doing this. And that started the project for Wandering Star Brewing Company. It took about 7 years to find a place, get it up, open and operating. And so we actually opened in 2011, Wandering Star Brewing Company in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. But because it was in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, that left me to kind of sales and marketing for here in New York City. And I'd go up and brew a little bit, but
I always wondered why Massachusetts with that one.
because he had a home there, kind of like a house in Beckett, Massachusetts, and it made sense. It was cheaper to get started. He wanted to do it here in Brooklyn, Yeah, I think it was just a little more costly than he was ready for at the time, and so that made sense, and better to have something than nothing.
Are they still open?
And
Yeah.
They are?
Yeah.
Great.
And I'm saying that right now because that transitions to, that was a steam system like what Chelsea had, a DME system, and then 508 was a small electric system with electric heat elements that I had not dealt with before. And so I went from 5 gallons on my stove to 15 barrels in Massachusetts to 2 barrels in electric and, you know.
And then
The
15
basement.
barrels here, right?
15 barrels here.
Well, there was some in
With some
between,
in-
though.
yeah.
Well,
Kelso.
so Chris went to American Brewers Guild shortly after you took on 508, right?
Yeah, as soon
I
as
was
I was
like-
ahead of, or like doing that, and it was all me, I was like, oh, things just got real. I better go to school. So I took us to the American Brewers Guild. Well, sorry, Mary took me to the American Brewers Guild. I was
sent
a
him to
broke
school.
saxophone player. I registered. She paid.
Mary, I
And-
need to go to school too.
I was still homebrewing at the time. I continued homebrew. I got really into sours, like traditional sours, long aging sours. And I had 25 carboys in my shared basement at one point, so I had to stop
wow.
brewing beer because it was too much beer. And so I started doing these fast fermentations. Along this whole time, I was writing. I was writing for Ale Street News. I think I maybe had written a magazine article or two. I had a blog. I met a bunch of people actually when was my first homebrew con? It was in San Diego in 2011, I think.
Sage.
Yeah. So that was my first homebrew con. I met Drew Beecham at the time. And I think I can remember hanging out with him, late night in somebody's bottle share and talking about writing. And I think I had mentioned, oh man, that'd be cool to write a book at some point. And so sure enough, Drew hooked me up.
Oh, it was Drew who
Yeah,
came with
man.
that, yeah.
So I went to HomebrewCon and I was like, man, I want to speak at this one day. And I did. So I was doing these short beverages and some kind of non-traditional, things outside of beer, boozy kombucha, short mead, things that really nobody was talking about at the time and people weren't really hip to. And they were things that you could do no matter if you were working 2 jobs and have 3 kids or live in a 225 square foot apartment in New York City, these were all beverages that you could ferment at home, no matter your situation. So I did. I submitted a proposal. I got to speak at the HomebrewCon a couple years after
one?
that.
That was awesome. It was special.
Was it?
I don't remember. Where was that?
Was it Baltimore?
No, Philly, I think. It was Philly. And then I spoke again at Baltimore after my book
right.
came out. But Drew introduced me to his editor, and so I was offered a book deal.
What's it called?
It's called Speed Brewing.
And I wish it was still available.
So hard to get.
When that book came out, we had to carry Cuvée yeast. Is that
Oh,
right?
champagne.
The
No,
champagne
yeast,
champagne.
yeah.
yes.
Champagne yeast.
Champagne yeast, yeah.
We had to get like cases of it, and also 1 gallon fermenters.
We sold so many glasses.
Everybody was just making short meads
great.
like crazy, and
When she did move in, so she was homebrewing, I was homebrewing. I had 2 chest freezers.
No, you had one, and then one at 508.
No, I brought that one home. That was the 3rd one. that came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you had 3
And I
chest
had
freezers,
2.
and you had 2.
So then we have a
So
lot of chest freezers
we have
at
4.
our house right now.
We're trying to we need to give them away.
I went to one of your chest freezer parties where you had too much beer,
Yeah.
and me and Carla went. Yeah, that was great. It was just kind of like, grab a bottle. What the hell is this? I don't know. Open it up.
Yep.
It was
I
fun.
know.
we did
one
get
last question on
married.
the
I want to
history.
ask that
well,
question,
we can
yeah.
talk about marriage because that's important. Also, I'm curious about how you guys made the jump from. Well, why don't you guys take it away? You guys seem like
How
you
we
have
made the
jump
jump from homebrewing
Well,
to.
I see that jump already, but from the jump from 508, where you've got a 2-barrel system, where you're doing short meads at home, it seems like you guys went through like a massive period of experimentation. Both of you with writing the book with 508, where you were brewing multiple times every week, and you always had to fill 8 tap lines with beer. And I know you sold a lot of beer, and we brewed with you a couple times.
And when you brew that small, you have to brew a lot,
Uh-huh.
and that's partially. I mean, that definitely that was the exercising that got us to be homebrewing a lot at home, but also making just brewing and brewing and brewing. To get good, you have to do it, and understanding ingredients and understanding how to manipulate them to get your flavor and to get from concept to glass. You can only do that from doing it. You can only get that from doing it.
But after 508, so 508 lost their lease basically. The landlord was
doubling it
or
and it made
something
no sense for us
insane.
to continue.
Yeah. So at that point, we started Cuzette Libations. Well, actually, you were offered a position at Greenpoint Beer Works, right? Greenpoint Beer Works?
Yeah, Kelly Taylor was the head of that, and I was a lot of times he always used to call me his HR guy, because he would call me. He knew I was connected in the homebrew scene. He would call me and be like, "Hey, you know anybody who wants to flip some kegs or work over here?" And I would always send him people. And then this time I was like, "Well, I'll throw my hat in the ring. I'm looking for a place, but I'll take it. And I'm not going to stay forever, and I'll do some part-time stuff."
And that was how big was that system?
That was a 30 barrel
system.
100 barrel fermenters, right? I mean,
Yeah, there were some 90
Yeah,
barrel
and that
fermenters.
was mostly like a contract facility. So it was built to brew beer for all the Heartlands. Kelly and Sonia started Kelso, so they brewed out of there. That was the opportunity that we had to start Cuzette Libations, and they contract brewed as well. And that really, so Chris, you kind of started
We had
cleaning
24
kegs, and you were dealing with the barrel program.
I was barrel guy, and then
Yeah.
and then the way they worked it over there is you go up the ranks. Like nobody started as a brewer generally, unless you were a brewer, but there's a decent amount of turnover, so you go up the chain as people left. It was kind of like an unofficial training ground for a lot of pro.
Yeah, I mean,
brewers.
that's where lots of people that are now own breweries, like Tony Bellis, one of the owners of KCBC, Sam Richardson, who owns Other Half, they were both head brewers at Greenpoint Beer Works. So a lot of people kind of went up the ranks there. Sam started before that. So people would come to New York City, and there weren't very many breweries. I mean, less than a handful of breweries at the time. So, if you were already a brewer, there were only a couple places that you could continue that in New York City. Or, if you were a home brewer, you got a job there, you proved yourself, you got a job there, you started cleaning kegs, and you worked your way up.
That was really important that I had that step between 508 and here, honestly, because that prepared me for bigger brewing and brewing to a schedule. This is bigger production. Like at 508 Gastro Brewery, we were still filling corny kegs, kind of like carbonating the way I would. So it was like basically an overgrown homebrew system, even though it was pro brew. As far technically, pro brewing is pro brewing, but if you're selling it, it's pro. But the techniques we were using were very.
The workflow must be very different.
Workflow is very different. Yeah, especially at Greenpoint Beer Works, especially when you have people doing shift brews and things divided between hot side, cold side. You got to be on the schedule, kegging this to get that tank free, and then flipping that tank so that brewer can go into it that day. And there's a lot of stress with that. We moved a lot of beer over there. We were doing 22,000 barrels per year with
that much,
with
really?
23 tanks. Yeah, and we were doing basically doubles a day, sometimes triples.
Also, learning to fix things. That's
Yeah,
really important, too.
Everything breaks, absolutely.
Yep, everything breaks. And learning to, even, right now we had an actuator issue on our solenoid, our glycol solenoid.
It's an actuator or solenoid, but this is an actuator.
It is?
This is an actuator, yeah.
Anyway, I'm still learning about glycol. I have a podcast to listen to. I'm reading. Lots of learning here.
Perpetual learning. That's why we're in it.
But, things like that, being able to identify, hey, why isn't this tank holding temperature? Why isn't it why aren't we able to crash it? And being able to identify the problem and fix it, or know when to call somebody to fix it. Those are all things that you kind of have to do on a pretty regular basis, because we're dealing, this is manufacturing. We're dealing with equipment that doesn't always do what you want to.
and that's just the production side. I mean, you also have to deal with the business end, right?
Yes.
I mean, that must have been, I know it was a learning curve for us.
Yep.
Yeah.
When we opened this, I think Chris, the other thing that happened, Greenpoint Beer Works also lost their lease. Same situation, landlord, was raising. So they quit, and then Gun Hill needed a temporary brewer to fill in for a little bit. So Chris went up to that.
That's right.
And
Yeah.
that was, another system. Every system's a little bit different. So that was another system that I think was really
That was
useful.
really helpful, for sure.
Yeah.
Going back to really quick, the fixing things. So at 508, when I decided to go to the American Brewers Guild, I told Kelly Taylor that, and he was like, well, "Why are you going to brew school? You're already brewing." And I was like, "Well, because I want to be in the business of, preventing things, not fixing things." And he retorted, he was like, "Well, you're in the wrong business, dude." He's like, "Shit's gonna break."
Oh, golly.
So you guys got married?
We got married.
Yeah, when was that?
October 24th, 2015.
Oh, no.
Well done, Chris.
We have a bowl that my dad got us. That's how I remember. It's a
I was
horrible
there.
Bowl.
That was my favorite wedding I've ever been to. It was such a good time.
It wasn't really a wedding. We threw a beer festival, a do-it-yourself beer festival. We had 30 lines of beer on tap.
All New York City brews or home brewed. I made some cider, I think, and some stuff.
We had one Pennsylvania thing that our Johnny Leroy
Oh, yeah,
Compton,
that's
who now owns Highway Manor, had 2 lines on that. But we basically threw a 250-person beer festival, and we got hitched in the middle, a little 5-minute ceremony, and then got back to drinking.
Every now and again, I'll talk to
celebrating.
somebody at the store, and they'll reference your wedding as like one of their favorite beer events ever. Yeah.
Yeah, we called it Smile Fest. It was a ton of fun.
Still have my Smile Fest
Yep.
glass. But there was
We would
there
like
was
to
a
do Smile Fest again.
a giant fire, like just a bonfire in
Oh,
the
yeah.
middle of New York City with a view of the city, and everyone's wasted and
was
just having
unreal.
a great time. It was
This
so
was
much fun.
Unreal
Yeah.
and unheard of. Like that place doesn't
It-
exist like that.
Yeah, it
no.
It just happened to be an area. We live in South Williamsburg, right on the river, and this was right on the river at the time, and it was going to be developed. So in the meantime, the management company was basically leasing it to a not-for-profit that had so it was like a not-for-profit park, and it was at the end of their season, so we were able to rent it for that evening, and it was like the Wild West in New York City. It was amazing.
I saw them a few months after that, and they're like, "Oh man, that was so much fun." Or the people that ran the place, like, "Oh, that was so much fun." And your thing was like the thing that made us decide maybe we will do weddings, like because we were like, "No, we're never gonna do a wedding," but it was just so cool. And they're like, "Maybe we'll do weddings." And then we tried a wedding, and we're like, "Nope, we're never fucking doing weddings."
Only your wedding's good.
It's like, "Nope, it's not gonna be."
Oh golly, how do we transition out of
How
that?
far
That's
how
good.
far along are we as far as your timeline now? So we've talked about Fifth Hammer,
Yeah.
but should we
So
bring
I
it up to
think-
now?
well, I
or
think-
where are
Yeah,
we
so
at
I think
now?
the other gap though is we knew, we had friends that opened breweries, just before us, or were in the process when we started looking. So Dave and Chris, they kind of knew what they were getting into, but it took a year and a half to find a lease.
Just
turns
to find
out-
a place.
Yeah, just turns
Okay.
out landlords don't disclose that they have a lot of violations against them, and you can't take that lease, or a broker might leverage your bid against somebody, to get the person that they know is going to take the space to pay more. So there's a lot of commercial real estate period is pretty tricky in New York, but especially commercial. And then it took us a year to build out.
And to that
For you
lease
guys to
thing, we
build
had
out?
7 leases that kind of fell through.
Yeah,
Also
in that
in
year
New
and a
York,
half.
if you're
Really?
listening from outside of this city, in New York, you can only open a brewery if the zoning is right. So, we can't just look anywhere. And if it might be a suitable place, it might be in the wrong zoning. So it might create challenges that you just make it impossible for you to actually open that we're not able to do. So those weren't even entertained. We finally ended up here in Long Island City. This is a great manufacturing area. At one point, 40% of all, and it might still be the case, but 40% of all the things made in New York City are actually made here in Long Island City. A lot of warehouse kind of things, and they're trying to really preserve that at the same time as it's really growing out and bustling by where the residents is and getting mixed use here.
Dave and Chris, when they started this, they knew they wanted to open a brewery with a tap room, but I don't think any of us knew. So I was working full time. While they were building all of this out.
They had to pay off
At a
my student
separate-
debt from the American Brewers Guild.
So we all knew we were opening a brewery and a tap room, but you're opening a business that includes really 2 separate businesses. And we were very excited about opening in Long Island City. Chris and Dave spent a ton of time in the neighborhood doing, after they got the lease and doing the build out, they met a lot of people. We're on actually a block where we get a lot of foot traffic. We're kind of between the water and some subways, some public transportation systems.
Right down the road from Rockaway Brewing also.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
actually Iconic.
MoMA
now, too.
PS1. Yep, Iconic has just moved in as well. We have 6 breweries in this neighborhood now, which is awesome.
Ale West Rockaway, Fifth Hammer, Iconic, Big Alice, LIC Beer Project.
Yep. But we didn't know how. We opened on September 29th because our draft guy, Anton, had finished our draft system, basically. And they started walking in, and we had 3 beers, so we started pouring beer that day. But we didn't really know how busy we were going to be from the beginning.
I knew.
I mean, we're very, very lucky, but, I would get off work and come and bartend at night because and learning how to run a tap room. I mean, luckily we had great help from the beginning. We had a great staff from the beginning. But this whole thing has been an amazing experience. Being able to brew beer and make something that we really feel passionate about and love, but then having this space where people come to celebrate, right? They come to relax, they come to meet their friends, they come to celebrate their dog's birthday, or, somebody's return to town, or a birthday, or whatever. People come to celebrate life.
This
and they are
community-
drinking something that we made. it's just been it's an incredible experience. I mean, I'm tearing up sitting here now, but it's true. Like, it is an amazing space to have.
That's beer for you. I mean, that's what beer has been throughout history, and you guys are continuing it, and it's amazing. Yeah, it's great. I love this place.
It's just the community that comes in here, and the hub to be able to offer that is like incredible. And I definitely believed in this place. I didn't think it would happen so fast to become such a staple of the neighborhood, and just very honored that to be able to be the soundtrack to people's lives here.
The beer is really good. You guys make really good beer here. That's a really big part of it. I mean, everyone's making really good beer, but you know, if you come into Fifth Hammer, like, that's how I judge breweries, is by everything, right? Mm-hmm. I know that if it has that name on it, it's going to be good. You guys have a lot.
Thanks, man.
All that we've talked about has led up to this point, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it is so good. It wasn't like you're like, hey, I made 2 batches and opened a brewery.
Right. Yes.
Right.
Oh, and I mean, you know, it's a constant, you know, we're constantly listening to podcasts and reading articles and going to, you know, the Craft Brewers Conference and listening to seminars and talking to people and asking questions, because
the learning doesn't stop.
No, we want to make the best beer that we can, and there's always new resources and new products. There's new hop products, new ways to use them, new techniques to use your materials. And the other thing is, we're lucky in that we started with 8 taps. We always had cider on tap, so we used to have 7 beers on tap. We were able to add another draft tower, 8 more taps, so we have 15 now. We were able to add that February after, so, you know, 5 or 6 months in. And we're very lucky in that people drink across the spectrum. I mean, yes, IPAs, fruited sours, and our Pilsner are almost always our top 5 bestsellers. But that's not always true. And people drink across the board. Like, we have an old school cream ale on, traditional cream ale on right now. We have an amber.
So good.
We have a pastry porter with chocolate and cherries. We have a cold brew summer stout with coffee and cinnamon and vanilla. So yeah.
I've been referencing this interview I saw with Prince in Arsenio Hall the other day, and it really meant a lot. It means a lot to me, and I feel like we're in the vibe of it. But basically, he was like, you know, we're in the age of singles, like, you know, we're in a single era and where it just hits. But he's like, I'm from the old school. I'm making albums. I want to make albums. And so when I look at this board, I'm looking at a whole album, and our portfolio has a little bit of something and everything. And go through this journey on this board, and it's really important to me that we have that. We're not just playing a bunch of hits, or I mean, they should all be hits, but you know, just there's a variety of what's in there. Mary and I are promiscuous drinkers, and therefore promiscuous brewers.
Well, and all your beers complement each other. Because, I mean, I'll come in here, I'll have a sour, and then I'll have a cream ale.
Right.
And then maybe a little pour of the barley wine and the cherry stout to go. Like your dessert.
Yeah.
And have some momos when they're here.
That's right. That's a good Sunday.
The food trucks definitely are nice. How do you guys split up the work? I know you do the bulk of the brewing, and I know Mary is involved full time. How do you guys divide these responsibilities?
So Mary is primarily now sales and marketing and a little bit of everything. And we've always talked about recipes together. And you know, our joke at first for our collaborations were called Pillow Talk, because I mean, what do 2 brewing lovers talk about at the pillow? Brewing, and then Dave is really good with numbers, logistics, and making sure that we're not, you know, going into the red, and like, he keeps us in track with all our dreams, and making sure that everything's happening straight. He's out delivering right now. Like, he gets dirty too, getting stuff done. We do what's needed, and we just share it where we play our strengths. You know.
Tell us a little bit about music. When you opened, the idea was to have a place for you to play, right?
Of course. Yeah, this all was an elaborate ploy to get me a steady gig. So I play every Wednesday night, called Beers for Ears, and with this, we basically improvise based on the beers that we have on tap. And I'm an improvising musician primarily, and we improvise everything. We just I get a different crew, and you never know what style or it's going to be generally. The idea was to have this be a kind of a music venue at first. Like, I set it up so that we could play above the bathrooms, but we quickly ran out of money and had to like kind of adjust kind of what it was actually going to be as far as build out. And now that's valuable storage space, and we're fine playing. Yeah. And so now we're playing down kind of like at street level with us. I love this tap room, but it is definitely it's a tap room, and you can't play music in here all the time because people can't escape it, and it's not for everybody. And this place needs to. It also takes up real estate for here. So as much as I'd like to play a lot more music here, it's not going to happen. I think ideally down the line, maybe there's a satellite location where I can have something where it does serve our beer, but there's a side room where music can be concentrated or focused on.
So you're only doing the Wednesdays? You don't have?
We're only doing
music?
Wednesdays, and we're only doing completely improvised music, and that's both for the fun of it, but also and the interaction of it. So we post what beer we're playing when we're playing, and so the audience can know and be like, oh man, that sounds good. I want to taste that. I want to taste that beer.
I got to come down.
It's fun.
Yeah.
It's really cool, and it's really great.
What's the future hold for Fifth Hammer?
So
what do you guys see?
Nobody knows. All we know is that we have 7 years left on this lease. We're going to make the most of it. We're going to be thinking about whether we can expand it or expand that lease here. Like I said earlier on, we're not really trying to take over the world with this. We want to be sustainable, and the reason we would grow is if we're not able to get all our the ideas that we have in our head from concept to glass. And as long as people will support that fund, we'll do it, but we won't do it if we don't know it can move. And it's scary growing too fast, so we don't want to do that. I'm not saying we don't have ambitions or dreams, but my dream is that place where I can play more music.
That's great. We heard a little bit about that. Yeah,
and where I can celebrate music and celebrate other artists. But as far as the future, right now, flavor-wise, there was stuff that we could not do.
Well, I mean, the Foeders, for example.
Right. So now we're entering a new chapter where we're going to be able to do some more kind of fun wood farmhouse stuff, beers that are a little bit more complex. How many am I looking at in there? I see looking at 2 Foeders, fermenting Foeders made by Foeder Crafters.
And they're pretty big.
Missouri oak. Yeah, these are can yield 30 barrels from each of these. And right now we have a spelt farmhouse in one. Actually, we just took out. It's done. And then we have a mixed fermentation, like 5 strains of Brett, amalgamation yeast or Brett strain with Essence wheat yeast on like a 50%, like on a kettle sour. Head Start sour thing. It tastes great. I'll taste you on it when you're over here.
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, hey, jumped on that.
I have one specific question for Mary too, real quick before we go. How do you take speed brewing and make it professional? Like, has anything come from that you're like, yeah, this was exactly my idea and we implemented it, or it came from all that practice? Either you or both of you?
Yeah, I think the biggest asset of writing that book for me here at Fifth Hammer is the flavor. I get to do a lot of I'm not on the brew deck very often, but Chris and I collaborate with Chris on recipe writing, and now I'm starting to do more ordering, which is deciding on what hops we're going to use in IPAs and that kind of stuff. We collaborate on all that stuff. But I really we have this fun tank. It's a 6-barrel bright, and we can do some super fun flavors in there. We do bigger batches at this point too. So
we throw off fun tank as if everybody knows what we're talking about. So why do we call it the fun tank?
So it's a 6-barrel bright tank. We have a 15-barrel system. We either go and do 15-barrel or 30-barrel fermenters. So at the point where the beer is done fermenting, then we will run off 4 to 6 barrels into this fun tank, and we can do flavor infusions. Right, that's where we can add fruit or spices or herbs or coffee. So I did a chai porter last year, robust porter, straight robust porter, and we took some of it.
A perfectly good porter, and
I went to Jackson Heights. Yeah, I went to Jackson Heights, and I went to some cool grocery stores, and I custom blended my own chai blend and added that. So we did that. We did this cream ale that we have. We did a coconut version where we added toasted unsweetened coconut and vanilla beans. We did a Tangelo version. Oh my God, I zested and juiced way too many Tangelos. But we're able to do fun stuff like that adds depth and variety to our draft list, and it brings, we want, when people come in here, we get a lot of people who come in here. We do have New York State Farm wine and cider, but we have a lot of people that come in here and they're like, oh, I don't normally drink beer, but if they drink, a passion fruit blood orange guava sour, or they might love the lemon lavender saison that we have on right now. People drink across the board. People drink a lot of flavors these days. Yep. And it's super fun to have, we just made an amber, we call it Remember Amber Ale. And it's just a straight up, we did dry hop it a little bit, but it's a pretty straight up, easy drinking amber, and people drink it. It's awesome. But, because we have, these hazy IPAs, 7.5% hazy IPAs. and superfruited sours, but people drink everything. We have a 12% barley wine. It is August in New York City, and people drink it. It is a barrel-aged 12% barley wine, in fact, and people drink it, man, and it is awesome.
It's a yeah, totally. Yeah.
I have one more question. Tell us about the tanks and their names. This is a very cool thing.
Yeah, this is I love my tanks, man. I love my tanks. And so we've named them after some very influential saxophone players or music that has really influenced my life, my being, my approach to all things. And so tank number 1 is Charlie Parker. We got John Coltrane. We got Dexter Gordon in particular. Is very special to me. Sonny Rollins, Paul Gonzalez, Ornette Coleman, Pharoah Sanders, Lester Young, nicknamed Prez, and Sidney Bechet. Those are the Foeders. The new Foeders are Prez and Le Dieu. So they used to call Sidney Bechet the god in Paris. When he moved to Paris, the existentialists call him the god, and it's aptly named. That's our mixed firm, more sour, funky thing.
That's so cool.
And,
we made a beer with you and was in Paul Gonzalez.
It was in Paul.
And then you played that long
Newport 56.
piece, yeah,
man.
for us.
Newport 56, 27 courses on Diminuendo, Crescendo, and Blue. It brought Duke Ellington back, from what was a dying. Big bands were dying at the time, with the advent of bebop music, and that single solo by Paul Gonzalez just brought it all back. Shit was rocking. Live at Newport 56.
We were schooled.
It was incredible.
Wow.
Well, I think
Thank you
we've,
so much, guys.
yeah,
Oh my
this
God,
has
I
been a
think this has
journey.
been awesome.
This has been a journey through your
The saxophone. Watch out.
So thanks a lot
Thank
for
you so much for
Thank you guys.
Yeah.
Really,
Yeah.
it's an honor,
Yeah, it
and
was
thanks
really
for
fun.
coming to us. Sorry we didn't
Yeah.
make it down.
play us out, Chris.
I think I need to hug
Awesome.
you guys. Thank you.
I like the fact that you learned that just from me going na 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 na.
Is that your song? Is that really?
Yeah, that's our theme song. Yeah. So that was really great. It was just so much fun talking to them. It's always great to go to Fifth Hammer. The beer is great. The atmosphere is awesome, and
And
one
they've
of
got
the
a great
things-
space too. Yeah.
just such a great space. One of the things that got me while we were doing this interview was really how much they have contributed to the New York City beer scene, and how much we've grown with them. Like as they've grown, our store has grown. Other breweries have come out. It was just nice to talk in that linear way that we did with them, and kind of go back over our history a little bit also through these times of beer happening in New York. It was just like going back in time a little bit and then coming to the future. Does that make sense?
It was sort of like seeing the story of punk rock laid out before you,
Exactly.
but in beer form. Yeah.
In New York City.
In New York City, yeah.
So just want to thank Chris and Mary. And
Thank you so much,
David,
Chris and Mary.
for having us. And
I think that's it. This is Douglas.
and I'm John. Thank you very much for listening. And this is
Penelope Amport.
Penelope Amport. Thanks for co-hosting today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being on the show, Penny.
Thank you, honey. You're great.
You're welcome.
Na 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 na. Biddly 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 biddly.
Boop.
Talking, testing the microphone.
Little closer.
Like here?
That's good.
Sing that song again.
Testing, testing
Singing
the microphone.
Yeah. I don't know. I think.
Welcome back to
lost my-
Ferment About It.
I'm so
Hey.
happy we're here.
Right here.